So anyways, why don't you just introduce yourself, Zach? Where you went to high school and where you're from.
Okay. Well, my name is Zachary Black. Um, I attended Salisaw High School, and I am, of course, from Salisaw, Oklahoma. Um, I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas, but for most of my life, I've lived in Salisaw, Oklahoma.
Um, and then what about growing up? You're a pretty remarkable story. I used to always talk about. You used to run around 440s your junior year for your consistent mile time, and then your senior year, you got down to 409, broke the state record, had a 17-second PR, and broke the state record. Through your whole high school career, that last year where you started doing things right, started training full time. What do you think the biggest contribution to your success was?
I think probably just a combination of several factors, but most importantly, my drive to keep going and keep doing it and like wanting to be better and just luck from like finding opportunities, finding the right people to train me, and being willing to engage with that and continue with it. Um, I had the humility to do it, but like you can never say that like luck isn't a factor. It absolutely is, and I got lucky in some ways. My last race was my 409. If I had just felt bad that day, like things would have worked out very differently.
And with you being successful, I think the biggest thing with youth nowadays is sometimes they don't have as much foresight. I feel like what you had to your advantage was you were able to envision yourself being successful. I remember you telling me, telling yourself you would break a state record, you would be successful, was something that started to grow on you and started to help you be better. What would you say for youth in today's time, how to have proper priorities and being successful like you? What would be your best advice there?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I think you just really need to understand what it is you really want and really engage with that. And for me, like I really wanted to be good at running. And my motivations for that were ingrained in very much like childhood dreams of just like wanting to be as fast as some of my favorite heroes. But like those childhood ideas eventually mature into something more. I think really it's about learning how to be true to yourself, and it's about knowing what to do to get to the things that you want. And
Right.
maybe not always easy.
Yeah, you're pretty remarkable. Just stellar foresight on everything. Which kind of leads me to the next thought process. I always talk about, just telling you what my club coach said, and Mike, and you have a really great story growing up. You didn't have things handed to you. It wasn't like you could just go get a new pair of shoes every week. I mean, you had to work. You had to work your butt off, and I think that's what makes your story so cool, was the fact that nothing held you back. You're on a mission, kind of like Billy Mills when he won his gold medal. Nothing was holding him back. He kept getting hit with a lot of things that got in his way, but he was set on getting that the Olympic gold medal one way or another. For you, what would you say your biggest hurdles were growing up? I mean, what would you say was the biggest thing that was getting in your way? Obviously, you persevered, and they didn't slow you down. But what do you think your biggest couple things were that you felt like it made it a little bit tougher? It wasn't just a straight line to success. What do you think your biggest hurdles were?
I think some things I really struggled with was just how people treated me growing up. Before I was an athlete, um, I was very much treated like a very nerdy kid, and I was bullied for that and treated as lesser. And when I finally did like join athletics and started running and doing all these things, many people seemed surprised and almost threatened, like their worldview was threatened that this nerdier kid can overcome them so easily in a physical activity. But I was gifted, and I kept going with that. But I think I've always had this feeling that I didn't belong in the world around me. And I feel as if part of my motivation for running was making my voice heard and making people see me. So I think that was very difficult. And just racing itself, like I had so much anxiety for racing, and everybody does, but I feel like my experience with it was so deeply emotional. Like it was just really, really hard every single race. And it got better, like slightly better throughout my years. But I remember my 6th grade year at state was just, I think the emotional pain before the race is like way worse than any sort of physical pain you experience during the race. And I think that was definitely a big stressor for me in my running career.
So you was kind of learning how to cope with with the racing energy, and learning how to almost find your kind of identity, and to not feel like whatever labels you got, they overwhelmed you. But I mean, would you just say, with that in mind, was there other people where you grew up that had a lot of relatability? Were they just like you, or would you say that you were different? Now, I'm not saying they were also successful, but I mean, with the people in your area and the youth in your area, what would you say your relatability is with them? Would you say there's a lot of people like, the next Zack Black, both physically and mentally? Because I mean, I don't think people realize how intelligent of an academic student you are too. But what would you say with the relatability is with the youth in your area of Oklahoma?
Relatability?
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like you share a lot in common with the youth in your area, in context of, you may have the same socioeconomic status, you may have the same mentality, you may have the same upbringing, you may have the same talent. Do you think, if someone truly identifies and see where you're coming from, that they could feel, empowered and say, hey, Zack can do it, I can do it? Or would you say you're a numerical phenomenon?
Um, I think if somebody is asking themselves the question of like, if like if they're really asking those sort of questions where they want to be good at something, or like they want to really excel or like fulfill their potential, then I feel like that's the kind of person that could replicate that story. Um, as far as relatability goes, I felt very different. I felt very isolated in my high school. I felt like a lot of like the athletes in the school I was in, like they were quite privileged compared to me. And I think it's not an unfair statement. And I mean, they made me know it too. But I do think that like there were people, sure, that were similarly to me, like bound to that social hierarchy, and who also were quite talented in their own ways. And they expressed it differently and went their own paths. But I do think that my story isn't something that is in isolation. I feel like that's something that a kind of person with similar drives to me can accomplish.
I'd agree. I think anyone that hears about your story almost feels like it's mythical because it's such a great story of perseverance. I mean, you were on a mission, and I remember one of our top guys who Jackson, who was one of the fastest natives in the last couple decades, but he just goes, he's got his head right. He knows what he wants. And I was like, I wish people like Zack would be more common because for you had resources available. I think a lot of youth has resources available. They have the right teacher. Maybe they only have one teacher, or they have the right parent. I feel like you had a very loving, caring grandma who I'd run into, and she was the sweetest lady, and just a heart of gold kind of gal. And then your parents were very, very supportive when I saw them at the meets too. But I think if people utilize those resources, although not everyone has a ton of resources, but I think there's pros and cons to life, and I think if you utilize those pros, like you did, you had a few resources, you used them, and you know what you wanted to do. As you said, you mentioned being lucky. I don't think you were lucky. I think you were able to look at your environment and surrounding and say, what can I do with this? And you did something remarkable. You're one semester away from graduating. You graduate this fall. You have a state record. People still talk about you in kinship about how awesome the story was. I was talking to a mentor of mine growing up, and we were just bragging about you and just saying how awesome it was that you're driving towards getting your degree, and you just have such a remarkable story of perseverance. I mean, you do. So my last question, after you get a degree, I know you have a couple things, but what are you looking to do career-wise? Any particular jobs or anything like that once you finish your degree, or you're still kind of brainstorming?
Um, I think, yeah, I'm still brainstorming for sure. I definitely need to take a break after college. My body has been sending me signals for a long time that it needs a break. Like you said, I have persevered through a lot, but that has taken its toll, I think. And I'm going to need some peace before I make another decision. But what I have been looking at, I have considered maybe teaching. I feel like I'm naturally good at like talking to people about like what their skills and like what they want to do with those. Um, I've also thought like trying to direct my career towards like a freelance art kind of career would be really cool. I would like to have my own business.
Kind of like
Um,
marketing?
yeah, for like my own art and stuff.
Oh, you have comic books, right? I forgot to mention that. I'll link the interview with your comics. You design and write stories on comics, right?
I do. They are going really slow right now because I am still in university, and none of them are finished, but they are in progress and they are viewable online. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll link everyone, compile what you got there, because I remember I was talking with my wife the other day about it, and she goes, "I saw them; they're really cool. I like a lot of his characters and everything." I was mentioning that you had a character that kind of looked like Sonic, but he was red. I was like, I don't know, I had a flash of the past with nostalgia when I saw it. So
Yeah.
um, I think that was cool. But yeah, I'll include that in there, and then I don't know. I think that's a pretty good route. And I also think I don't know. I think whatever you're going to do, you're going to do it pretty darn great. I already told you before we started talking with the interview that I secretly hope you'll be a teacher.
Mhm.
You're relatable, and as you said, you got to mentally recharge and sense what works for you. I think when people that are focused, I think when they get done with college, the ones that are going to get where they need to be with success, sometimes it takes a year or two to kind of balance it out. And I did a couple different jobs. I got really lucky because I liked my jobs beforehand, but they weren't long term.
Hmm.
And then, I was going to go into law enforcement, and kept getting this not coach, but the president from a small college kept calling me. And he's like, "You want to coach?" And I actually said no. And then a month later, somehow I did an interview and ended up doing that. And then I got very blessed to cross paths with people like you, people like Jackson.
Hmm.
I had other great people. I think you kind of got along with Ryan Lang, for example. He's just a fantastic person. But it ended up being a career I didn't plan on pursuing, but ended up pursuing it. So
Yeah.
how life takes you. But yeah, so link me to that. I'll include the interview, and then I think that's everything. We may come back and do like a second interview, but I really appreciate it, and yeah, I appreciate it. You got any last shout that you'll wish to people, or
Any
any last
last?
words of wisdom?
Um, I mean, just like if the world chooses to be your enemy, just fight like you always have.
I agree. I agree. That's, yeah, beautifully said. Well, thanks again, brother. I appreciate it. And then we'll catch you later.